It's another edition of Baseball and Beyond, presented by Massa's Restaurant. I am honored to be talking to Keith Hernandez. Keith, it is always a pleasure to see you in St. Louis.
Always good to be here. Wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't scheduled for this series. I've only got the first game because ESPN took the Sunday game in San Francisco. I had to make up one, so they got me here. I insisted that I come here for the game, so I have one game in St. Louis.
That's a good schedule. George Hendricks style, you'll be in the car by the ninth inning, right?
Actually, I'll be on an airplane. I got an early flight tomorrow, but it's always good to come home. I always enjoy coming back here.
I think it's always really fun to talk to you about those days with the Cardinals. I think one thing I didn't realize about you was what Lou Brock meant to you. I forgot that he was still around and doing things when you were kind of coming up. And just what you said a few years ago to me about him, I'm just curious about what your thoughts on Lou was as you kind of made your way into this team.
Well, actually, I just had lunch with Lou today. I haven't seen him in a while, so we had lunch together this afternoon. And I came up in '74, and Lou's last year was '79, so I played 6 years with Lou. And I saw Lou break Ty Cobb's record, single season and all time. And Lou was at the height of his career, and he was always very, very, went out of his way to be helpful to me. And those are things you never forget, because I struggled my first 2-3 years here in St. Louis. I was 20 years old when I was called up, and I was probably too young. And I had more downs than ups, and Lou was always there offering encouragement, and really was my mentor and almost a second father. And those are things that I'll never forget, that he took the time. He was a great all-star player, a future Hall of Famer, and he took an interest in me. It was really very touching.
And it was funny that you were a Cardinal fan growing up, even though you're in California. I always found that interesting, and I watch your broadcasts all the time. I love how often you talk about Cardinals. You guys talk about the Cardinals a lot, and I really enjoy that. But you grew up in San Francisco, and you listened to KMOX, right? Or how did you become a Cardinal guy?
Well, KMOX didn't reach there, but my father during World War II was in the Navy and was in a ship repair unit, played for the Navy team, baseball team, was a first baseman. So when Stan went into the service in '45, he was put over on Pearl Harbor, and he played on my dad's baseball on the Navy team with my father. So when the war was over and we were old enough, Stan left us tickets at Candlestick Park when they came and played the Giants, and we'd go down to the clubhouse after the game. So I remember '62 and '63. We were old enough then. I was 8 or 9 years old then. And I remember sitting in the clubhouse after the game with Stan Musial on my left and Ken Boyer on my right. So it kind of made me a Cardinal fan from the get-go, and although I was more of a Ken Boyer fan than a Musial fan, and then ironically I would go up and wind up playing for Kenny.
That is crazy. And you get to '82, it's about 8 years of your career, and you guys win a World Series that year. What was it like? Because those teams weren't real good that you started with. They were pretty good in the '70s. I think people maybe don't know how guys were close, but you get to '80, you get Whitey, you bring in Bruce Sutter, you start kind of building this thing. What was it like to see the team kind of being rebuilt and you being a huge part of that?
Well, there were some down years in there. I got called up in '74, and we lost the division to the Pirates the last day of the season. I got called up in August, and then '75 was the team was good and faded, and then '76 was a very, very bad year. Red got fired. '77, Vern Rapp came in, and we had a very good year. We finished in third place when we kind of faded it in the end, but it was the beginning, I think, of the young players starting to turn the corner. I had my first good full season in the Cardinal uniform. '78 was a bad year. Vern Rapp got fired. I had a bad year. I did 260 that year, I think, or 255. And then '79, Boyer started at the helm, and that's when Templeton and I had the great year. And
you win an MVP, by the way.
Yeah, and a batting title. And Blue finished his career with a great season. And then '80 was another bad year, and then Whitey came in, and then things started to become more consistent. He made a lot of moves, and I survived those moves, and I was happy about that. Because he made a ton of moves in the winter meetings, if you remember. He got rid of a lot of people. And eventually we won the World Series in '82, which was great because they hadn't won since '67. and so it was a long drought, and it was just great. I played in Old Bush Stadium when there wasn't a lot of people there, when the teams weren't good, and then to see the Cardinal fans come out, because this is a baseball town, we know that, it's a Cardinal town, so it's probably one of the greatest baseball towns to play in.
And you have to leave in '83, and Whitey. I've never really heard the real thing with that. I don't know if you have the background, and when just you read these rumors and everything. But what was it? I mean, what happened that day?
It was
a week. It felt like.
Well, it was a lot of things went on, and there's no need to rehash. But I was traded, and I had a contract coming up too. I had one more year on my contract, and that probably had some things to do with it. But there was a lot of circumstances going on. It wasn't a particularly good time in my life. But life moves on. I would have loved to have been here. I do think that if I had remained here, I think that maybe '85 and '87 would have been we would have been winners. And when they went to the World Series, and I think that we probably would have had a big '80s dynasty. That we would have got there in '86 and '88 as well, because it was a great Cardinal team. But life moves on. I had to go over the Mets, and I made the most of it there. I was fortunate enough to get to a whole new team with a bunch of young guys that were so talented, and to be a part of that, it was a lot of fun too. But my loyalties and my great memories, because I grew up a Cardinal. I grew up as a kid as a Cardinal. I grew up in the farm system with the Cardinal way. It was always pride in the uniform. Those are things that you just don't wash away.
That is an interesting thought that I'd never thought of if you did stay, because then not only are you here, but you're not on the Mets, which is the team that wins in '86,
right.
And you're the captain, so that means you're the guy that they're looking to, and that is a big deal.
I look at me at first base, and you have Jack Clark in right field hitting fourth behind me. That would have been pretty formidable with Willie McGee, who had 350 something, and it would have been quite a formidable lineup. Now, whether Whitey would have traded for Jack Clark, who knows? But Jack Clark, when he came here, was such a powerful hitter, such a great cleanup hitter for his short stay here. That particularly in '85, he was just very, very dangerous.
You've written many books, and I just think that '86 team is so fun to hear about from afar. We were Cardinal fans, but I think there was a respect of that team. But, man, when you look back at it, you guys just had this 30-year reunion that was so cool to see you guys all back together again, seeing Ray Knight back out there. But what does it mean to you when you think back on that team? Because that is a classic, holy cow, one of the great teams of all time.
Well, it was a great year. We won 108 games. There's only 14 other teams that won 108 games in the history of baseball, and we were 54 wins at home and 54 wins on the road. We played well home and away. We just blew the league away. But to me, the fondest memories are that series we had here in September in '85, when we had to win the 3 games, when we came in and won the first 2 games. Darryl Strawberry's home run off the clock and the old scoreboard, and we won the second game, and then we lose the third game, and I went 5 for 5 in that game. That was such a great series, and it was filled up here, and there's no other regular season series that I played with so much on the line and so much energy and so much competitiveness between the two teams, and it was just a treat to play in. And we kind of went back and forth. You guys won in '85, we won in '86, you won in '87, we won in '88. So it was a great run for the Cardinals and a great run for us.
Yeah, it was so much fun. A couple more minutes with you. I appreciate your time. You did come into St. Louis, and you don't see many players booed the way they booed for you, and that means you did something here. They loved you, and you got booed. What was it? What did it mean? Was that flattering, or was it? How did it hit you?
Well, there was a lot more circumstances involved in that, but the time has healed lots of wounds. Jack Buck was terrific for me, and I think that he kind of rehabilitated me towards the fans of St. Louis. I'm forever grateful to Jack, what he did for me on the radio, because I left and I wasn't here, but I had friends that live here and were listened to Jack, and they were telling me what Jack was doing, and I'm forever grateful to Jack. I always loved Jack. I got along with Jack wonderfully. I thought he was terrific. So it was just, we were the competing team. I mean, it was either us or the Cardinals. So it really added to the excitement and the intensity of the game. It was the same way when the Cardinals came to New York. They got booed. And it was just really good competing those 4 years with the Cardinals.
We'll get back to the interview with Keith Hernandez in a moment. We'll talk about Seinfeld and that mustache. It's going to be some fun stuff to listen to. Hopefully you stick around for that. Also, just a little housekeeping. I'm going to start doing one podcast a week starting Labor Day. These things will go up in the middle of the week, and hopefully you can catch up and listen to some of the ones you haven't heard yet. Also, a reminder, this show is presented by Massa's Restaurants. Thank you, Massa's Restaurants. 5 locations, one in Newtown, in St. Charles, Baldwin, Winghaven, Town and Country, and Bridgeton. Italian fare, great entrees, great portions at an affordable price. It's so good. They've got Cajun pasta, they've got beef pepe, red sauces, white sauces, St. Louis-style pizzas. The Big Al is there. Oh, my goodness, that thing is delicious. St. Louis-style pizza. The bartenders are fun. Bring your families, bring your friends. Sit at the bar, get a booth, get a big table, and just enjoy some delicious Italian fare at stlmassas.com. That's where you can find directions and menus. Oh, it's so good there. Massa's Restaurants, no baloney in the cannelloni. I thank them for being the presenting sponsor of baseball and beyond. So once again, starting Labor Day, podcasts go up once a week, somewhere in the middle of the week. You'll find them Wednesday morning. Also, if you want to see a companion blog to the podcast, go to my blog page, bradsportspage.blogspot.com. Brad's, B-R-A-D-S, sports, S-P-O-R-T-S, .blogspot.com. That's where I'll put some video and some pictures and some companion stuff to the podcast. Again, thanks to Massa's. And now let's get back to Keith Hernandez as we circle in on his days and his big episode on Seinfeld. You have a borderline Hall of Fame career, but then you go on Seinfeld. And I can't think that you thought when you did that it would last and live the way it did. Can you just give me a kind of the surroundings around that and what it means to, people probably want to hear you say, I'm Keith Hernandez.
Well, Jerry was a Met fan, Seinfeld, and he grew up in Brooklyn, and I was his favorite player in the 80s. So he and Larry David wrote this, what they wrote, was titled The Boyfriend. So they didn't know how to get a hold of me. I don't know why they didn't go through the Mets. I was retired a couple of years at the time, and eventually they got a hold of me, and I just went and did it. I'd never acted before, and they said I'd had minimal lines, and it wound up I was a guest star. And I had
an hour-long series, two-parter.
Well, Larry David told me when it was all done that if I was really bad, they were going to not use it in sweeps week and make it a half hour. But they wrote the extra scene, and the other subplot was George trying to get unemployment. So that was the next scene, the subplot that would make it an hour. And it all, basically, when it was all over and done with, Larry David said it all hinged on you, how good or bad you were going to be. And he goes, and you did pretty good. We were very pleased. And that show turned out to be, iconic. I was just very, very fortunate. It was a great experience. It was a whole week of work. We started on Monday, and we finished on Saturday night. And it was all 7 a.m. calls in the morning, and we weren't done till 6 at night while rehearsing and going over to lighting and what they call blocking, where the actors have got to be positioned so they don't get out of focus. They changed the script. Everybody was involved. There was Larry, there was Jerry, there was 3 other writers, and all the principal actors contributed every day to try experiment with each scene to make it better. So that the creative part of seeing that episode unfold through the week was the most fun for me, but I was so nervous when it came time to actually do it in front of a live audience that I wasn't when I was done and we finished. We wrapped after that. Once we did it live in front of in studio on Saturday morning. I was going to fly home. I was so exhausted from the week's work that I just wound up staying in L.A. At a hotel in Santa Monica on the beach for an extra 5 days just to chill and relax, and I finally flew home.
And did you ever say, "Is this really the script?" I mean, you had to look at that thing and go, "Okay, come on, this is this." Did you find it funny? Did you say, "Well, I don't know, this seems kind of weird for me to be saying these things and having Jerry come"? I mean, and were you a fan of the show at that time?
I was not a fan of the show. I didn't know about the show. I'm not a big primetime watcher. I'm still not today. And I didn't know anything about the show. And it was the second year, I believe, of the show. The first year it didn't quite take off. It took off, basically, Larry David told me it took off after our episode, which is what they were hoping for. When you're reading the script, it's like reading a play. And I'm not a trained actor, but when we started doing rehearsals of the various scenes, then I realized that it was pretty funny and pretty clever. With when JFK just came out, the movie, the Magic Loogie, and all that, and all the different subplots, and I realized this is pretty good. But I never realized that it was going to be that popular an episode.
Last thing I have for you, and I'm sure you get asked about it all the time, the mustache. I mean, it's a life of its own, right? I mean, this has become the signature. I mean, Albert Bosky is the Fu Manchu, and this mustache is, you shave it, and then people went nuts. Tell me a little bit about how weird that is, that this is part of you.
Well, to tell you the truth, I grew the mustache. I tried growing the mustache very early when I was young, 18, 19. And it's all because of Clint Eastwood and all those spaghetti westerns that he played when he had the mustache. And that's the reason why I wanted to grow the mustache. So it's all Clint Eastwood's fault. And it just kind of stays with me. When I don't have it on, I feel like a different person. I don't feel like the same person. I feel kind of like I'm half naked or something. But it's there. It's going to stay. And it's a pain in the butt sometimes. You get older, you got to maintain it and trim it up. And I get a little tired of doing that. But I don't like the way I look without it, and I'm just so used to having it my whole life. So there it is. You're
a cult guy. I mean, what does it mean? And I already said last question, but I've seen these things where you're coming in and they've got film of you walking into the ballpark, and fans. I mean, they love you up there. I mean, but you've kind of become a cultish type person. Is it? It's just part of your thing, right? I mean, I'm Keith Hernandez.
Well, I guess that's a good way to put it. We're very good in the booth, the three of us, and I must say our producer, Greg Picker, is our producer, and realizes it's just me. I'm able to be natural and not be forced, and I can be silly. And I think in the course of 162 games, and I do 110 broadcasts, most games aren't as exciting, and you've got to have a little entertainment value there, and I guess we appeal to the New York fans, but I don't do anything. I mean, it's just me. It's me in front of a camera. It was the hardest thing to do was when you're looking into the camera, everybody would say, pretend it's your girlfriend. Pretend you're looking at the camera and it's your dad or your mom. Well, it's a camera.
Well, you can fall asleep up there too. They even let you fall asleep, and you don't.
That was in between innings. That wasn't a great thing right there. But
still, I mean, but most people would get skewered, and they're like, Keith's having fun. He's in 12th inning.
Well, that got on Letterman and all the late night shows about but that was in between innings, and I had done a promotional thing all day that day, and it was for Habitat for Humanity. I went over and helped build a house over in Jersey from like 6 in the morning to like 5, and then I went right to the ballpark, and I was exhausted. So I just told our AD, and I said, wake me up when we come out of commercial. And I laid down. I was so tired I fell asleep, and then she tapped me on the shoulder, and then my producer put it on the air. And that maybe wasn't the wisest thing to do, but it adds to the mystique, the lore of our broadcast, and I guess me. But it's okay.
So that was Keith Hernandez. That was entertaining. How about Keith? He was fun. So many stories. One more time before we go, I want to remind you about the title sponsor, Massa's Restaurant. Tell them that Baseball and Beyond sent you. Tell them your podcast friend, Brad Straubinger, said, go over there and tell them there's no bologna in the cannelloni, and you wanted a St. Louis-style pizza, or you wanted some red sauce pasta. Tell them Baseball and Beyond sent you. Tell them your podcast friend, Brad Straubinger, sent you. You never know. Maybe a special on a drink, or maybe a couple T-Rabs thrown in there for you because you know Brad Straubinger, and you said thank you for being a sponsor of Baseball and Beyond to your folks at Masses. STLmasses.com for directions and menus. And one more time about the companion blog, bradsportspage.blogspot.com. Head over there for more information each week on who I'm going to interview next and who will be part of the show. Also, there's some videos and pictures that I put up over there on the blog, and I also give you information on who might be coming up on the next blog. Terry Pendleton actually will be next week's blog. I'll be putting these up now every week, once a week. Right around Wednesday morning, you'll be able to see a new podcast appear on TuneIn, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud. Anywhere where you go to get your podcasts, that's where they will be starting Labor Day. New ones coming up every Wednesday. I appreciate you listening. Tell the folks at Masses I sent you, and we'll see you next week with a new one from Terry Pendleton.